Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pablo Maave, and I'm here to present ʻbôrdərlands, which is an augmented reality documentary about migration at the US-Mexico border. First, let me explain the journey that brought me here today. A few years ago, I photographed this family from Aleppo, Syria. They were building their new home with a tarp and some wood scraps along the road to Damascus in the Bekaa Valley. During my time in the Middle East, I had a chance to report on the Syrian refugee crisis. And ever since, most of my work as a journalist and filmmaker follows the personal stories of asylum seekers who have been forced to leave their homes, often for their own survival. Soon after, I traveled to Serbia to cover the Balkan route to Europe. In this photograph, a young man from Pakistan is making dinner inside an abandoned customs warehouse in Belgrade. Little by little, I started to get more interested about the possibilities that new media formats offered to journalists. I was especially curious about new ways these technologies can tap into the empathy of the viewers and make them feel a closer connection to these powerful stories. That's why a few years back, I built a 360 camera with some used GoPros and a 3D printed housing. At the time, we were developing out how to best tell stories using 360 video. That's when I put the theory into practice. I traveled to the Greek island of Lesbos to film an immersive documentary that follows three Afghan brothers as they seek asylum in the European Union. These are only 3 stories out of the 2 million people who have crossed the Mediterranean on their way to Europe since 2014. The projects I just showed you are just the main driving force that has led me here today. ʻbôrdərlands is an augmented reality documentary that uses photogrammetry and volumetric video to tell the stories of the people who find themselves stranded at the southern doorstep of the US. These are the stories of the lives put on hold at the Chaparral migrant camp in Tijuana, Mexico. Here is the southwestern border of the US. On one side of the fence, San Diego. On the other, Tijuana. That red pin is the Chaparral migrant camp, right in front of the pedestrian border crossing, which registers 70 million travelers in an average year. This makes it the 4th busiest crossing in the world. We enter the country through that very checkpoint. And customs seemed really curious to find out what volumetric depth sensors were all about. And we were in Mexico. The old border wall on the left and President Trump's wall on the right. The sheer scale of this piece of infrastructure makes it hard to grasp how big it actually is. And I asked myself, could augmented reality be a good medium to better understand this story? As part of my research, I talked to several journalists from the R&D department at a big New York City newspaper. I was curious about the ways they were thinking of augmented reality when telling their stories. And one word kept coming up in our conversations: scale, scale, and scale. What if augmented reality made it possible to stand next to the border wall we just saw and truly experience its scale through your own eyes? Photogrammetry would be the way to find out. This mural at Tijuana's Friendship Park really caught my attention. The design of the bars of the wall is lenticular, which means that a person sees a different image depending on the angle they look at it from. And as you can see, artists have taken full advantage of that style. It took more than 200 pictures from every possible perspective. They then used reality capture to piece all 200 images together and create a high-resolution model that could then be deployed in augmented reality. However, the photogrammetry of the wall is just one part of the experience. The other part is the personal stories, filmed with volumetric video. This is what a full volumetric capture studio usually looks like. They're normally used for big productions and achieve really high-quality scans. Just 2 hours south of this LA location, we set up a different kind of volumetric capture studio. To film our interviews, we used relatively lightweight and travel-friendly equipment. We packed several Azure Connect depth sensors, a 4K DSLR camera, some LED panels, and a green screen. We also used the LiDAR of an iPhone 12 Pro as a backup. This is the full equipment list. And that on the right is Evelyn, the protagonist of our story. Putting into practice her experience as a teacher in her native Honduras, and with the help of 2 other friends, she set up an informal school that teaches more than 80 kids every day at the Chaparral migrant camp in Tijuana. We'll be learning more about her journey in a second. For the current prototype, we made the conscious decision to only interview people who were confident that getting their story out would not put them at risk, many of whom had already talked to the press in the past. We used a gaming laptop to process the footage with DepthKit, which is a piece of software developed by Scatter. We cleaned the volumetric footage, adjusting the depth ranges and keyed out the green screen with a refinement mask. Once that was ready, the video was processed in Unity and realized in augmented reality. We're going to be watching part of the ʻbôrdərlands work in progress demo deployed in Central Park. We'll be seeing the wall in its full size, as well as Evelyn telling us about her journey. We chose Central Park as an iconic place that's easy to identify by the collective imaginary. We also chose it because it's a place of privilege. And this asymmetry clashes head-on with the story that Evelyn is telling the audience. The technology we're using is not fully mature, and you're going to see some glitches, which are really just a reminder that this is an exploratory exercise about the real potential of emerging technologies in journalism, and shows us a glimpse of what's possible. Let's now look at the prototype.
Mi nombre es Evelyn Yadira Sánchez, soy de Honduras. Yo pues de profesión decidí estudiar lo que es maestra de educación primaria. He ejercido mi labor desde el 2010. Siento esa pasión por trabajar con niños, educarlos, tener paciencia, saber de que uno pues nació para servir y no ser servido. Ya llevo 2 años aquí en México. Quise cruzar al otro lado, pero no se pudo porque lastimosamente las órdenes del expresidente y por el COVID no he podido cruzar.
Let's now talk about the story behind the story. The magic of journalism is that it chronicles the events that make up history through the micro stories of individual people. And the cycle is complete when those micro stories create a connection with other people somewhere else in the world, usually through some form of technology. With the rise of new technologies of image capture, like the ones we used in this project, the conversation around the ethics of image ownership is today more relevant than ever before. And one of my priorities as the director of this documentary was for the people we interviewed to get a better understanding of the complexities of a new medium that even us filmmakers don't fully comprehend yet. Going forward, I'm going to be applying to different grants and fellowships to expand sections of the originally intended research that we were not able to accomplish with this prototype because of budget and time constraints. The plan has 3 parts. First, I want to expand my research by exploring the legitimate use of deepfakes in augmented reality journalism, specifically when deepfakes are used to mask the identities of people who put their lives at risk by speaking out. Second, the release of a field guide to volumetric video journalism, stemming from our production experience in Tijuana, to help storytellers in the nonfiction ecosystem push the boundaries of their own work. And the third part is to build a partnership with academics for the publication of a white paper that explore and dissects the ethical implications of augmented reality and deepfakes in journalism. I can't finish this presentation without thanking these 2 project collaborators, Barrett Limoges and Lucas Wozniak. I want to send them a big thank you, and also to the dozens of people that I bothered with late-night requests for advice and last-minute favors. They're really the ones who made this project happen. That's everything on my side. Thanks everyone for being here today.